Welcome back, everybody, to Conversion to Christ podcast, where we dive into many different subjects about the gospel of Jesus Christ. But most importantly, we dive into individual stories about how they found Jesus Christ in their own lives. If you want to support the channel, we have a Venmo at conversion2 Christ. All of our videos and audio goes up on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Spotify for podcasters, and Instagram. So go check it out. Let's get into this next episode.
Jackson Mraz ASMR channel.
Mars.
Yes.
Mraz. I'm calling him Mraz from now
Jackson
on.
Mraz. A lot of people do that, actually.
He's got to be related to Jason, right?
Yes, and Bruno.
And Bruno
at the same
Mars.
time.
Yeah, at the same time. It's just two last names in one.
Yep. What are you guys' last names? Same last name or different?
Different last names. So my last name is Cecil. His last name is
Mahoney.
Mahoney.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were adopted into different families. So I was adopted from my birth mom's sister.
Okay.
So she's basically my aunt. And then you were...
I was adopted by a random family that my birth mom put me up for adoption. So like through the church, they used to have like an adoption like program or whatever. I got put up towards that, and then a family like found it or like found me through it or whatever.
That's kind of weird though if you think about it.
Weird. I got put up on like a marketplace sort of, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Adoption marketplace, bro.
Yeah. And then got adopted, and then our biological sister was not put up for adoption for about 5 years. She was still with our birth mom, and then she got put up for adoption, and then got adopted by the family that adopted me.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And so me and her grew up together, and then he grew up by himself.
Yeah, I grew up separately for like years.
I remember I got the authority to baptize, people for the dead. I think I might have been 16. It was when they, God switched it to where you can baptize when you were 16.
Yeah.
And the first time that I was able to do that was actually for him. And that was also the first time I met my brother.
Yeah, it was
So like two huge like moments in one.
Like for him.
Yeah.
Oh, what?
It was a pretty big moment too, because like it had been like almost 2 years since we saw each other, and then we planned it. Our parents planned it to where we'd see each other, and then like they told me that I was getting baptized, but they just didn't tell me who.
Yeah.
And then when I saw him, he like baptized me, and it was really special. So
Whoa.
we kind of shared that.
I remember my voice was like so shaky. I was like, first off, I was nervous to start off with to like even say the words because I'd never done it, and I was like, "This is my brother. Like this is super."
Whoa, that's crazy.
It was so cool.
How old were you both at that time?
I think I just turned 16, so you must have been.
Yeah, I was just about
15.
like 14, turning 15.
Okay, bro, that's crazy.
Dude, I know. It was it was one of like the coolest moments of my life. I've got to say.
It was pretty sick.
It said yesterday I got to go to the temple with my biological family and baptize my brother. It was the best thing that's happened to me. I love you, Ethan.
I just met these two guys literally last night. I was down in Jordan River Temple just doing an initiatory, just wanted to go feel some peace, And then after I was like, I don't want to go back to Holiday to go to the Vasa and Holiday. So I was like, I have the pass to go to any Vasa. So I went to the South Jordan Vasa, and I walked in and started playing ball. And I saw these guys playing with a couple of their friends. And then like after a couple of minutes, Ethan, you asked me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Ethan asked me he's like, you want to play basketball? But your friends didn't really want me to join, right?
Yeah.
After we finished, Caleb was like, are you a member? You're a member, right? And I was like, yeah, I am a member. And then I was like, why? And you're like, me and my brother are members too. And I was like, oh, dope. And then it ended up talking about how I do a podcast, interviewing people about how they found Jesus Christ in their own stories. And then they were like, bro, we want to hop on. Let's go. And I was like, all right, let's do it tomorrow. So that's why we're here today.
Here we are.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Do you guys want to introduce yourself? Like just who you are, where you're from?
Yeah. So I'm Caleb Mahoney. I was born in Springfield, Missouri, and then moved to Parkville, Missouri, and then to Platte City. Grew up there for about 13 years, was raised there, and then moved to Kansas. My dad wanted to downsize so we could get out of debt. He had a lot of college debt. And then I lived there for 5 years, went through high school, and then been on my own since I turned 18. And crazy stories, but somehow ended up in Utah with my brother. So
yeah.
Let's go, baby.
My name is Ethan. I was born in American Fork, Utah. It's about like 40 minutes from here. I've been living in Arkansas with my mom because my parents are divorced, and like every summer I'd come out here and see my dad, and that's how it's been for the past 18 years of my life.
So you guys are brothers, but
Yeah.
half brothers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
It's
'cause
complicated.
Our moms, so we have like the same mom, just different dads, and
Yeah.
that's the same for like our sister as well. So we all have the same mom, just like different dads.
Okay.
I believe, anyways, what I've been told by my, biological mom is that my dad was married to her at the time of her giving birth to me, and then after I was born, they might have gotten a divorce or something.
Okay.
And then you were born like a year or so after.
Dude, I don't even know.
There's like a lot that I don't know, and a lot that
Hasn't
there's
been shared with
a lot
us.
of lies that have been like tossed
Yeah.
around by our mom about like what actually happened with all that. But
Yeah.
as far as I know and what I've grown up knowing is that obviously I'm born, so
Yeah,
I'm here.
fair.
But
How's your relationship with your birth mom? Your relationship with you.
Oh, jeez. All right. Well,
that too much at first?
no. Well, he went out for 7 months in San Diego with her and our sister. But me, I've never really had a relationship with her. I saw her once, and
Okay.
it was like when I was like 4, I think, and I haven't seen her since.
a little bit about her. She's like a diagnosed narcissist.
Very
She has-
bipolar.
Your birth mom.
Yeah, she has
Very
bipolar, a bunch of other like mental issues,
Okay.
which ties into like the way that she treats other people and like us for the specific, story. But yeah, my experience in San Diego was nothing short of crazy. Like it's with people that are, bipolar and narcissistic, it's like very good for like a little bit, like really good. Like it's
Yeah.
awesome. And that's what hooks you in. And then
Yeah.
like their true colors start to like show and like,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
a little bit by bit.
He something happened to where she basically kind of like forced him to move out,
Mm-hmm.
which was not good. And then he it was funny because we hopped on a FaceTime call with her to basically confront her about it and
Yeah.
tell her why she was wrong, because she was like flexing all her money. She was like flexing all this, flexing all that. And to be honest, we didn't care. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, you're supposed to be a mom, not a like business mafia person.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it was funny because like it's an inside joke to us now. She was like, well, just so you guys know, I make 6 figures a year. And I was like, well,
Yeesh.
if you make 6 figures, then I make 4. It was so funny in that moment, bro.
Yeah.
It was hilarious. And then
That's actually funny.
she then after that called me ugly and
What?
then cursed me out and called us a bunch of different names, and then hung up the
What?
call, blocked us both, and we haven't been in contact her in the past year and a half.
Dang, bro. But now what I'm excited for is we can start out with Caleb. If we're going to start from like the very beginning till how you got here now, and then there's like specific times throughout your life where you knew like that made you realize God was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to start, Caleb?
Yeah, sure. So,
Okay.
like I said previously, like I was adopted. The family that adopted me, they raised me, in the church or whatever. And my whole life, I've always grown up excited to, level up or whatever it's called, like get the next.
It's like progress in the gospel kind of
progress in
thing.
the gospel. Yeah. So I remember being like 11 and I'd be sitting in sacrament meeting. I'd be watching all the 12-year-olds passing the sacrament or whatever, and I was like, one day that's gonna be me. I was like always excited to like reach that progress, like you said. I feel like you get like interviewed before you get baptized, and you go through all these questions about if you believe the church or all this, and I've always been that guy that just says like yeah, or like that. But I always feel like now, I said that, or whenever I was interviewed or asked those questions, that I just said it because I was raised to believe that, and I never really figured it out for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Same with me. Like growing up, I just said yes to every question. Just like, yes.
and
yes.
it like always felt right, like until I became more independent, because it's the only thing that I really knew. And like the church was a massive part of my life. I grew up with 7 siblings, and my parents were on the stricter side of the members of the church. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I grew up with that being a massive part of my life, and so that's why it was always a big deal to me. progressing and learning more and like putting forth effort. I graduated seminary, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like when I turned, I want to say, it was when I was 14, when EFY was introduced to our area. I went to EFY in 2019. That was awesome, by the way. That was a great experience. But
EFY is insane.
Yeah, dude, I heard so much about it from like people that were older than me, and like I decided to go. And you know, I didn't ever have a job, or like my parents didn't have enough money to pay for me, and so they actually blessed me with the opportunity to work for them and earn that money to go to EFY. It was pretty expensive, but I was really grateful for that because I've heard about it for years and looked forward to it, but went and had an awesome experience. And I feel like that's like one of the first times where I actually like
felt
really,
the spirit,
really
like,
felt it. Yeah. Growing up, I was always, you know, asked to like give talks in sacrament meeting or whatever, or, you know, bear my testimony, or my parents would encourage me to go up in testimony meeting and, you know, talk about what I believed in. Yeah. And I always just, you know, said the standard, you know, 10-year-old, you know, testimony or whatever about what they believed in.
I know the church is true type stuff.
Yeah. Joseph,
like to bear my testimony, I know the church is true, and I say things in Christ.
Yeah. You know, stuff like that. But I feel like at a point where it kind of just like turned to where I actually started believing it was at EFY.
That's awesome.
And I feel like that's the same for like a bunch of people that go to EFYs, you know, where they figure out, you know, one very, very specific moment where I realized that the church was true was we were actually kind of side topic. On the way here, we were like talking about how we want to start listening to more gospel music because we listen to like Playboy Cardi and like Drake. And
all that stuff.
And so we played the EFY medley on the way here. And
so good, bro.
As we were singing, like, we are right.
Bro,
you know,
it's so good.
I got the
it's one of the best songs ever, bro.
Dude, singing that together is crazy, bro.
Dude, and my mind, I closed my eyes and I kid you not, I literally felt the same exact feelings I felt while like we were singing that for the last time. You know, that last time where you sing it with everybody.
It's always so sad during that last time.
Like even just talking about it right now, I'm getting the chills. But that moment for me, that last time when we were all singing it together, the last time I saw everybody I met at EFY was the first time I actually felt for myself that the church was true. Because if you think about it, like the words you're exclaiming in that song is like, we are, you know, God's army, you know, like we stand. And it's like, if it were sung in a different tone, it would not have as much meaning, but you're exclaiming that, like, you're like, you know, you're belting it. We were belting it in the car full volume.
I like, bro, I freaking like, before you continue, I like literally cry every time I hear that song. Cause like that, so funny enough, I actually had a very similar experience. I went to EFI all 4 years, and the first time I went, like before that point, I don't know if I really like felt the spirit very strongly. Yeah. But I remember hearing that song for the first time, and I still like remember how I felt. Like it was like my body was like, I couldn't even explain it. Like it was like an outer-worldly feeling. You know what I mean? I was like, holy crap. And I remember when I was 18, I didn't want to go on a mission, and I was like, nah, I don't want to serve a mission. I want to go play college basketball. And me and my mom were visiting one of the colleges that had interest in me, and we were driving. And I remember I turned on that song because it was just like on my like playlist or something. Yeah. And I turned it on, and like while listening to that and driving to the college, I was like bawling. And I got out and like saw the college, and I was like, this is where I need to go. So then I went there, Southern Virginia University, and then like that literally school like helped me get back to church and like helped me kind of change my life back to. So like I love that song, like has deep meaning for me. But keep going with from EFY, because I think a lot of people have had that experience where at EFY it's like the first time they like feel the spirit, like whoa, like this is real actually. So from then on, when like have there been ups and downs, or have you like been just from there you're like, oh wait, I know the church is true, this is easy? Like, so
I feel like definitely a lot of my friends that I met in EFY, we all had very similar experiences. Like I remember kind of getting into like an EFY clique sort of thing where like we were kind of like the
group of friends.
I think we called ourselves like the fake Mormons or whatever. Like we were like in the church but not of the, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we
like, you weren't like crazy Molly Mormons that were like crazy strict, but like you still believed, like
so that was like my friend group or whatever. But once, you know, that moment hit where we were singing that song, it all changed for us.
Dang.
And then, you know, so at EFY you have like that banner, right, that like your team had. At the end of our session, you know, we cut the banner up into strips and we each tied it around our wrist. I kept that on for 2 years.
What?
I never took that off for 2 years until it broke off itself.
No
and I still
way.
have that, like, you know, it's in like a little container that I made for it.
Dang.
Same with my EFY wristband. I kept it on for about 1.5 years.
Cool.
But where I was going with this was, that was like the first time I felt that it was actually true. But there are so many things that happen in between then. I feel like Satan likes to throw, Satan likes to throw like hard times at me to test, you know, or like maybe it might be, how do I put this? It might be like a test from God with like the hard times that are thrown at me to see, you know, how strong my faith is. And every time that I feel like every time that something really, really hard has happened, you know, like whether it's like things with my family or, you know, I fail at something, I always like take it really, really hard. And my faith is always like shot down, you know. Specifically like in the church, I remember one time I got it was actually when I started, you know, vaping, and I've since quit or whatever, but like at that moment I remember that's when like everything really changed for me. Like I stopped like believing in it more and more, you know,
as you like gave into sin, you kind of stopped believing in.
And slowly like all like the worth of my EFY memories kind of just faded, and like everything that like the faith that I had like built up and like the progress I had made, you know, and you know, learning the gospel and like becoming it really started to like fade away after that moment. And it's just kind of all gone downhill from then. And then I went to FSY actually after it changed to FSY from EFY, and same thing happened again. I had that moment, and you know, I was like, I think it was like a little less powerful than that first moment, but same thing happened again. You know, I had like a great experience. I met great people, and I already knew these people because it's like only within your stake that you go to FSY with. But still, you know, it was a great experience, and you know, I quit a lot of things then, and then I came back, you know, went through the whole process again, just like it happened again. And I felt like I don't know, after the first time, you know, I was like, whatever, you know, I guess the church isn't true if it didn't, you know, stick. That was kind of my mindset. And that's like how I kind of made an excuse for me not sticking with it. Right.
Yeah. Dang.
And then the second time it happened, it was just kind of easier to let go of it, I guess, because I'd already done it before, and there was like less guilt that I felt. I don't know if that, you know what I'm saying? That's totally fair. And then, went downhill a lot. I got into a lot of really bad things. Even I remember one night I was drinking with some friends in San Diego, actually. One of the scariest moments of my life. I watched some guy die in front of me. I went to a party one time in Beverly Hills, California. And there was a guy that pulled up and started shooting at the house, and we were checking into this party, and this guy got shot in front of me and died. Whoa. And I was drunk out of my mind, and I had to like jump, like I grabbed like all the people next to me and like basically saved their lives. Not really, but you know, made sure they didn't get shot. We hid behind a wall. And it was at that moment where I stopped drinking, I stopped vaping. There's this girl that that I got in kind of relationship with. She was like not Mormon or anything, or not religious, but she was against drinking, she was against vaping, and I quit it then. And then actually when I left San Diego was when her and I kind of broke up or whatever, and I got back and just got back into it, another one of those times. But that was when I like realized that, you know, drinking and all that is not really good, and so I haven't really drank since then. Dang. I feel like kind of dumb, because it's like God's like, dude, this is not good for you. Like here's this like scary, like life-threatening thing, and then like I go back into it, and he's like, come on, Caleb, like I've shown you time and time again, like this is not. I'm trying to like, I feel like he's trying to like guide me on the path, and I just keep making these mistakes. But then actually, kind of back to Moxie to make another example.
Wait, before you continue this real quick, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
So with like, I want to talk about how literally like, because you were talking about like, oh, I just forgot all those experiences I had at EFY, and I like went back into sin, right? Like Satan is so good at making us forget our spiritual experiences. Like that's like, he's a master at it. He's super smart. He's like deceiving. And if we don't do things every single day to have the Spirit in our life, we'll forget it. We're humans with like imperfect brains. And like, that's happened to me so many times where like, on my mission, I literally saw someone be like healed from like almost dying through the power of the priesthood, right? Someone was literally dying and God commanded them to be healed and they were healed. And I was like, felt the Spirit insanely strong. And then like, say a week later, I'm like, did that really happen? Like because for example, do you feel right now how you felt your first time at EFY? No, right?
Not even close.
Right, exactly. And so Satan's going to make you forget those things if we're not reading our scriptures, if we're not praying, if we're not trying to serve others every day, if we're not trying to grow closer to Heavenly Father, we're going to forget those special experiences. And that's why like a testimony is special, right? But conversion is different, because a testimony, you know it's true in your heart, but that doesn't mean you won't break the commandments and start falling away. But conversion is when you're dedicated and you're going to follow the commandments, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people know it to be true, but they're not converted. And so every day we need to try to be converted, right? And so like when you kept facing those hard times, what kept you being like, I still want to be in the gospel? Because for a lot of people, they get like this misconception of when they keep falling and they can't overcome it, they just give up kind of, and they go away from the church. Like what has kept you from being like, I'm done with the church? Like they have too high of a standard for me. Like I can't live to the standard. Like what has kept you going?
Like, okay, so just so I better understand your question, you're asking what has kept me from saying like no to the church like completely, or like
like why are you on this podcast right now sharing your story? Like why, like from how many times you've fallen and gotten back up, which I'm not saying just you, I've done the exact same thing. Everyone is just continually falling, but we learn from it and we try to get back up. Like
yeah, for sure.
What has kept you from just saying like, I don't want to do this anymore, I just want to live my own life?
Yeah, so actually, first thing I wrote down in my notes before we started this was EFY. Like that was the first like 3 letters that I wrote down.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's because of that first, thing. It's because I recognize and I constantly realize that was like a real experience. And like, I feel like that's the thing that's always bringing me back. Cause like I noticed that you were a member when I first met you, like we talked about earlier. And I could have just been like, oh, cool. He's a member. I don't have to like further that conversation. But there was like, there's always something when I meet somebody that's, a member, or I come in contact with, some great person or something great happens, my mind always goes back to that. And I don't know why, it just naturally goes back to that. But
that's amazing.
Like I can confidently admit, that I've willingly sinned over and over again, like knowing the consequences and knowing like, it's not at all the kind of person I used to be like 5-6 years ago, or like during my childhood, or like it's completely against what I deep down believe in. And it's really weird because like something will happen and I know that like God's involved in, the way that it happens, or I'll feel the Spirit at some point in my life. But then a couple hours later, next day, next week, next month, I'll just be like back into what I just did, previously. But yeah, that first experience at EFY is probably the reason why I go back. But. So
then 2 more questions. One, how are you going to keep the Spirit in your life, right? Because you're like, sometimes it's there and then I fall back into those things. So what are you doing now to keep that in your life? But 2, like, well, first answer that one. What do you think about
that? So like we said, I moved out here with to live with Ethan, and I guess I really couldn't keep vaping when I came out here, but I dropped a lot of things when I came out here to be with Ethan, because one, I wanted to get rid of those addictions for my physical health, but also at the same time, I feel like it's not a good look. And then number 3, it's just not a good thing to do, if I'm trying to progress spiritually. And I know before I moved out here, Ethan and I had talked about going to church together. And so actually tomorrow's going to be like our first day back.
Our first day back at church,
Whoa,
baby.
That's so cool.
After like, I don't know, I haven't been in like almost 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been since Moxie, but that kind of is a segue into my other topic I was going to bring up. But did you have another question?
Yeah, real quick, one more. So I think it's like because for example, I had those experiences where I would rely on them a lot for like when I was at hard times. Those were kind of like my foundation, where I could be like, I know that happened. I know that was real. I felt it, right? And so my EFY experience for a long time was my kind of like crutch, right? So what's like, I mean, basically you guys already just answered my question. You're going to church tomorrow. Like I was going to ask, like, how are you going to make new experiences where you feel the Spirit that strong again? You know what I mean? And changing your life, going to church. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that? You basically answered it, but
I have like this super big, like philosophy that I kind of like guide everything that I do with now is like, you are who you surround yourself with. And like the kind of person that I want to be, and that like deep down, I know I want to be. I mean, every day I might do things that may seem differently than my actual goal, but like I want to be a good person. I want to grow spiritually. I want to become who I used to be while I was at EFY. Cause I remember feeling the most free in my life of like stress and like anything during that moment when we were singing that song. And like you said, the foundation, and that was my foundation and like my crutch for a while, like you said, but you're
gonna start creating new ones, man.
Creating new ones starting tomorrow, but singles ward.
Let's go, baby.
Fun, but yeah. About the Moxie thing, when he left, actually, I was so against like going with because a lot of the people that work for Moxie are actually members, and so the people that we were living with in our apartment where we were staying while we were selling were members. And I went out there. I got recruited by my best friend in the church, his cousin.
Okay.
It's kind of weird, but I met him at like stake dances and whatnot when I was like 15, and he invited me to go out and sell, and so I did. But he also invited me to go out to the singles ward with him when I went out to sell. And I didn't take the invitation for a while just because there were other people inside Moxie that I was trying to look cool for, and I just didn't want to seem like one of those guys. I guess
that's fair.
I don't know. I've always been like one of those losers that are like, oh, my image is like the biggest thing to me. Like I care, what people think about me. But anyways, took just the chance.
Part of learning. Yep.
Yeah, it's part of life, right? But I grew up. I decided to take that chance to go to the singles ward, and I did. And like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like so different than like the family wards that you go to. It's like you're around people that aren't trying to look cool, but they're your age, right? Like you're not around people that are judging you, but you're also around people your age. So it was like doubly making me feel welcome, right? And so I loved it. We had like those lunches after church or whatever, which was always awesome. And then I remember the bishop specifically, or branch president, reaching out to me, and he was like, "Yeah, so where are you at, in your spiritual journey and whatnot?" And went over it with him, and he invited me out to his house. This guy is stacked. He invented like like in the church where they have those water sprinklers in the ceiling. He invented those.
That's
guy's
awesome.
Like the inventor of those in all of the ward buildings.
What?
Yeah. Or just I guess in all the world. He invented this. But anyways, he invited me over to his house to talk about it, and I remember that was my first actual first step towards like confessing everything and like the repental process.
Dang.
And
that's awesome.
That moment was, I'd say, about twice as powerful as that first moment that I had in EFY. And I'm like about to start tearing up right now just thinking about it. I remember like he asked me that question, like, is that all, right? Is that all that I need to hear? And I remember literally feeling Satan in my head, just like, that's it. You don't need to say anything else. Like, that's it. But I knew that there was more. And he just kept asking me. He was like, Caleb, because I wasn't speaking for like a minute long, and I just took a drink of my water, and I remember almost spitting it out because like, like in the first vision, whenever Joseph Smith was like constricted, he could not speak. I felt like that, and all these thoughts and everything kept playing through my head, and I feel like Satan was trying to put all the good times of sinning through my head, so where I wouldn't want to say what I was going to say, but he kept nudging me, and I remember the second that I finally got up the courage to say that last thing that I had done was like the most freeing thing ever, and I just cried so much. And he stood up. I was sitting in a chair across from him. He stood up and I stood up, and he like brought me in his arms and just hugged me. And I remember opening my eyes for a second and like almost seeing God just hugging me. Like I just felt his presence there hugging me. And that was like one of the most life-changing moments ever. And dude, even now just talking about it and just thinking about it, I haven't thought about it for a while. Like I said, I left Moxie and like went back home.
Yeah.
But I was like on my path, right? And I got back home, and I said this earlier. I might have said this earlier, how I've been on my own since I was 18. And when I got back home to me is, living with 4 friends that are partying every weekend and doing all that. I just fell right back into it. But it's not, it's been really recent compared to, 4 years ago when I went to EFY, or like 5 years ago, however long it was. But yeah, it's definitely one of my most powerful experiences there.
Wow.
But I feel like that's why I'm even more able right now to go take that first step again, to go back to the church, and that's where we're going tomorrow. But
dang, bro. Bro, I'm telling you, like, when it has to do with repentance and change and becoming closer to be like our Heavenly Father and the atonement of Jesus Christ, like that is the most powerful spirit I think you can feel on this earth. Because same with me, like when I confess, I mean, I told you guys a little bit how I had to come home from my mission because I decided, like you, like I was just like, yo, the church is true. What the heck? Like I gotta take care of some things. And so when I confessed and when I was told I was worthy, so I confessed, came home, and then 6 months later I was told I was worthy to be a missionary again. Like that was the strongest I've ever felt, like the presence of the Savior, like right next to me. Like the atonement and what it can do and change someone's life, just like it's so insane how powerful it is and how like he will always be there for you no matter how many times you fall. Like he's right there and waiting for you to say like, all right, I'm ready to confess and change. Like I want to be. And you were there in that moment, like just finally that bishop or branch president who it was, like probably was prompted by the Spirit to just keep like asking you. And then finally when you were able to, you know, give up that last thing, like
yeah, I remember, I don't know if you can relate to this or not, but you walk out of the office and like it's just like you walk out almost like a completely different person. You feel like a completely different person. I walked out this dude's front door down his long driveway because like I said, massive house, it was crazy. But I remember like it'll sound really silly, but the sun was going down. It was a beautiful Sunday evening. Like the wind was blowing through my hair. Like I was in Florida. Like it was all just perfect. Like I felt like God next to me. And I remember FaceTiming actually the director of sales. He was like, he had like a big calling in the ward that I went to, the singles ward. Yeah. But he was kind of like the one person out of everybody that was kind of being snakes inside Moxie that wasn't a snake really.
He's the one who invited you.
Yeah.
Right?
And so I called him and like told him what I had just done. And I remember us both crying on FaceTime together. It was awesome. Dang. But yeah, no, I feel like almost shame for now talking about it and knowing like what I've done since then. But I know also that I have that same desire again, and we're making the first step once again, right, to go tomorrow. But yeah.
Well, and one thing like you just gotta realize eventually is that we're here to sin. Like we're here to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. Like if God, like he purposely gives you weaknesses so that you'll become humble enough to realize, wow, I can't overcome this on my own. Because we like to do a lot of willpower as humans. We like to say, oh, I can overcome this. Like I'm just going to try really hard. And then we realize you can't because you just keep falling into it. Yeah. And the only thing that can help you overcome it is the atonement of Jesus Christ. And so like one thing Satan likes to do is make you feel a lot of shame. And one thing God gave us as a gift is guilt, to be able to realize, okay, like I know that was wrong and I'm going to move on for it, but it's a quick guilt, get over it. Cause we recognize it's wrong. Right. Yeah. And so just don't let Satan put you down, because they're like, people have come back from 10 times worse things that you have done. And they've become the best people in the world. Like I'll tell you the same thing. Like I've probably done just as much or worse than you like 4 years ago. And like through the atonement, I literally have like, I'm just someone who I never thought I could become through the atonement of Jesus Christ, and awesome. Fall, like it's crazy. And I still have so many weaknesses, but compared to who I used to be, like I think Satan just gets us in a trap of saying like, oh, like we can never return, like we're too lost almost, you know. Mm-hmm. But I was gonna say too, I've also related to that experience a lot, to where like I think there's times in our lives where we hit a moment and we're changed forever from that moment. I think we all have a certain amount in our life. And I think for you, that was one where you hit that, and then from moving forward, you're just a different person. Yeah. And I think those moments are so special because you're just like, oh my gosh, like I don't even feel like that person 2 minutes ago. Like, and that's all from the atonement, dude. Yeah. Like walking out that dude's door, and I felt like taller, which is like corny or whatever. I felt taller. I felt bigger. I felt like more confident. Like it was just like you said, completely different person. Dang. And I feel like, going back to what you said earlier, is like that's like my new like thing to look back on and like realize when things are because when I take that first step tomorrow, I know it's going to be just Satan's going to tempt me even more after I get out of church tomorrow. And like what my whole thought process is like I got to think back to that, how I felt, you know, when I got out of that the bishop's house or whatever. But that's definitely what I'm going to look back on and, you know, remember when I'm like going through hard times. But
I know it's going to be even worse because, you know, it's like slowly over time, over the past like 4 years of my life, when, you know, I've had these ups and downs or whatever, it's slowly gone uphill as well. Like slowly progressing towards that time where I'm just like, okay, you know, I'm done. I'm following the gospel now. But I feel like this is definitely going to be, I feel like this is going to be the big step. But
dang, that's super exciting, bro. I think one thing you also both of you need to take in mind about returning to church is sometimes, and you probably heard this 1,000 times growing up, sometimes the people in the church aren't perfect, right? And sometimes they make mistakes, and sometimes you're given priesthood leaders that sometimes suck, but they're human, right? And they're volunteers. They're not like God, right? And so, for example, I've had a lot of bad priesthood leaders I had priesthood leaders who told me I couldn't go on a mission and just told me to give up. And I like wanted to so bad. And they were, you know, there was a lot of reasons why they didn't let me and a lot of reasons why they had no faith in me and oftentimes never trusted me. And it was really hard because I felt like every time I went and talked with them, it just got worse and worse. And they were just like, no, like almost like stop coming to talk to me. And I was like, what? And so I realized after a long time that we need to sustain our priesthood leaders because they're called by God and we need to trust them. Yeah. But also if they treat us like crap and people in the church too judge us, we can't hold the church's teachings and the imperfect people as the same thing, right? Because there's going to be really crappy people inside and outside the church, no matter what, right? Some people are in the church for the wrong reasons, right? They just do it because of culture or because they're raised in it, right? Not because they believe it. And some of those people treat others really badly. And a lot of people leave the church because they're treated badly. But that's the problem, is that the Spirit, the atonement, repentance, the teachings of the gospel have nothing to do with people's actions. So I just want you both to be careful because you don't want to go back the first time and then have one bad experience and be like,
just have
I hate this crap
for us for the rest of our lives. Yeah.
Exactly. Because it happens and you just got to remember, you can always change wards and you can always call out people.
Especially being out here in Utah, there's like, dude, when
so
I first
many.
got here, I drove down the street. I was like, oh, look, it's one of our buildings. And then like 2 minutes later, I was like, wait, did we just go down the street? Like, did we just see that? Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, that's awesome. So yeah, dang, you're gonna make a big next step. Yeah. That's freaking crazy.
I'm like shaking right now. I'm like having to hold myself because like this is like a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So it's funny because a couple months ago, May?
Oh, it was April. It was
May,
like
yeah.
my birthday when we left.
So come April time, January, February, March. Come March, actually, he calls me at like during the end of March. He's like, "Yo, Ethan, I just got this offer," and I'm like, "Okay, spill it." And he's like, "We could make thousands of dollars selling pest control," and I'm like, "Bro, I am down. Let's do it."
That's awesome.
And they told us we were going to like Disneyland, going to like all these expensive places like Hawaii, all these cool, fun, different things. And then the first week comes where it's signing all the contracts, getting our iPads and stuff. Come the second week, that's where things started to kind of turn to where we were knocking doors. And my first day on, it's kind of sensitive. I'm still talking about it though. I haven't really told a lot of people. I've only told him and my parents. I knock on this lady's door. She is holding a baseball bat. Like she's about to bash my brains out. She's holding it like this. She's like, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, no. And she's like, "That's what I thought." Slams the door in my face. She's like looking at me, staring at me. I sit down on the curb next to her house. And I just call my dad and I'm like, "Dad, listen, I need to get out of here. Like I want to go home." And he's like, "Okay, listen, I'll come out there next week. You'll be fine." And I'm like, "Okay." The day after that happened, we got our new areas, obviously. And I was in a no trespassing area, which they specifically said we could go knock at. And about like 2-3 hours into the knocking, I knock on the board of the HOA's door and I give her my pitch and I try to sell to her and she doesn't budge. So I leave. Well, she's like, "Listen, you got to go or else I'm going to call the cops." So I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to go to the next house." And she's like, "No, you got to leave." And I'm going to be honest, I was kind of being a jerk, being like, "I'm not going to go." And then
just because you were told you could be there, right? So
yeah. And then we were told we had to push. So I was pushing. She wasn't budging. And And then about 2 hours after, I see this because I'm knocking in like a 50, 60 plus neighborhood. And
like
then
of old people, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, so I see this group of like 60-year-olds. It sounds so bad saying 60-year-olds. I see this group of older people.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. This group of older people. They're standing there. They turn their heads slowly. They look at me, and I'm like, okay, sick. So I just keep walking. My legs are tired, so I sit down on the bench with my iPad. A cop car rolls up, and another cop car is following him behind. And I'm like, great. Is this for me?
Frick.
And so the cops step out their car, and they're like, hey, buddy, how are you? And I'm like, doing good, tired and hungry. And they're like, oh, okay. So they start talking to me about like, asking if they know why they're here. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I tried selling this lady the pest control. She called the cops. They're like, yeah, in a sense. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. And so, like half an hour after that shows up, my two bosses show up. And apparently this is confidential information that I really should not be sharing, but I will anyway, cause that company's horrible.
Moxie.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. We were knocking in Royal Palm Beach. And before my bosses showed up, the cops were like talking to them, and they were like, okay, do you have the permits to knock in Royal Palm Beach? And my boss he's like struggling to find the words. He's pulling a bunch of like lies and excuses and all this stuff. The cops are getting very annoyed. So I text my mom. My phone's at 1%. I text my mom. I'm like, hey, cops are here. I don't know what's going to happen. And my mom's like, are you okay? My phone dies. So I don't have
No
contact with my
way.
mom. Then my bosses show up with the right permits.
Yeah.
Right. I find out later, like a day or two after, that they didn't have the permits to where we were knocking. Those were
Dang.
fake permits.
What?
So a detective car then shows up. Detective pulls me aside. He's like, hey, my name's Detective blah.
So-and-so.
Yeah. And he's like, you mind if I talk to you for a minute? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I'm really scared. Like my heart is pumping.
Yeah.
And I was just like, please don't let me get arrested. Please help me in this situation. I just need help.
Yeah.
I need to feel comforted, all this stuff. So then I get this sense of like relief from being in that cop car, for being in that detective car.
Yeah.
Cause he like locks the car. He's like, listen, are you okay? And everything, all that stress, everything's just like whoosh.
Went away.
Finally, I have somebody to talk to about everything.
Dun, dun. Sorry. I'm like a sound effects guy.
Plot twist. Everything goes away. Everything. I feel safe. I feel loved by this detective.
Yeah. Dang, that's pretty cool.
If he ever hears this, I just want to say I'm safe now. I'm glad you're the one to save me from that. So,
Yeah.
but he's talking to me and he's like, this really sounds like labor trafficking. And I'm like, because he then explains it to me. He's like, so did they tell you all these different things that you're going to have? And like, did they say they're going to do these things for you? And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, that's labor trafficking. And I was like, what? And so,
Like, dang.
and so eventually my bosses are there and they're talking to the cops, and the cops told my bosses that I wasn't getting arrested. And I'm pretty sure the cops were looking out for me.
Yeah.
Like I
They're,
think
trying to.
Yeah. So they told my bosses that I wasn't getting arrested. I walk out the detective car. My bosses are like death staring at me, bro. Then the cop, he like whispers to me. He's like, listen, unfortunately, I'd be a bad cop if I didn't arrest you, but in sense of safety, I'm going to. And I'm like, okay, please do. Cause like, I'm scared out of my mind. I don't want to work for this company anymore. They've told me all these lies and I figured out everything. You know how in like an anime or in like a movie, how like the main character realizes something, like realizes a bigger,
And it's like so intense.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like, bro. I felt like the main character. Like I felt like One Punch Man in a sense.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
But so I get in the cop car with cuffs on. So they take me, and the lady cop, she's so nice. Like I was so nice to the cops. They're so nice to me. She's like, so are you okay? And I'm like, not really. I really want to go home. Please just get me home. And so she's like, okay. So they go to their station where they're like typing down all my information.
Yeah.
And then the detective, he shows up, and I'm really happy to see him. I'm like, yes.
The same
there.
dude. You were like,
Yeah.
let's go.
So he was my brother. And then he brought me Taco Bell, which was nice.
The detective?
Yeah.
No way.
Because they asked if I was
The homie.
hungry, and I was like, they were like, when's the last time you ate? I'm like 2 days ago.
Basically, if you want to do anything, you have to sell.
Yeah.
So, like,
What?
basically kind of try to motivate you into selling so that you can
It's a
eat,
horrible
but,
way
like-
of motivating.
But
Yeah.
like, if something happens and you don't sell, you don't eat. So like,
Yeah.
yeah.
People at the jail were really nice to me. They were really kind. This lady let me sleep in her office because she knew that what I did wasn't bad and it wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
But it was my company's fault, and they put that all on me. And so it was 3 a.m. by the time I was released. No, 4.
It was 4.
It was about 4 a.m. by the time I was released. And so I go
Dang,
home,
bro.
and I stay out there, but I knew deep down that God was protecting me then by obviously me getting arrested, by my dad coming out, flying, basically saving me from that situation.
Yeah. That I'm sure some of that will have to do with your conversion to Christ and why you believe in God. Because you guys talked about how you felt God had gotten you through those sucky times. But like, if we're gonna start from like the very beginning till how you got here now, and then there's like specific times throughout your life where you knew, like that made you realize God was there. Why are you here to share this?
All right. Well, I grew up as a kid in the church to where like, it almost looking back at it now, it almost felt like I was kind of like forced to go. But I enjoyed going to it as a kid, and I really felt good. Like my slate was always clean, like everything like that. But as I grew up, like when I hit like 11, 12, it kind of felt like I was slowly fading. Like it felt like my beliefs were going away from me, and a lot of other things. That's how I'm kind of feeling right now. Like, because there's been so many things that has happened to me, that have made me kind of stray away from the church a little bit.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
yeah, I haven't really felt it since I was baptized. Like I've always felt that if God was really real, that he would like show me that he was. And there's been some times where, especially getting arrested in Florida, that has been the case, to where I knew he was real by getting me out that situation.
Yeah.
And going back to that EFY thing, the first time that I ever went to EFY was really special. Like it was the best thing that happened. And that was one of the moments that like I actually felt was like that the church was actually like working.
Yeah.
Like in a sense of like working as in like making me believe more and more. And to me now, like there's been like my friend, his name is Jaden. Him and I have been friends since like 8th grade. I saw him switch from this guy who was wanting to go to parties, wanting to like hang out with girls, do all this different stuff, to a guy who is, because he's not part of the church, like part of our church. He's apostolic.
Okay.
So he's going there, and I've seen him turn from this guy who's
Like partying, drinking,
not a good influence,
yeah,
to a guy who I really want to be and look up to.
Dang.
But it feels like now it's getting to the point where it's kind of too late for me to do anything, because I've all my life, not like all my, since I was like 13, I've struggled with something I'm opening up about. I've struggled with hecka like nudeful images and videos and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's really taken a toll on my mental health and a toll on who I want to become. And even now it's still a struggle, because there's so many things that I see that Satan is kind of in the back of my head. He's like, I know you like it, like go do it. And I'm like, all right. And so then after that, I know what I did, and I felt like there's no turning back from that. And I've stopped repenting since like a year 2 years ago, and it's really kind of, like I said, putting a toll on the mental health and putting a toll on me. But now I feel like now is the time to actually start going to church, start doing all these things, because there's been signs that he's coming. Like I've seen like all over like TikTok, even in my own personal life, that he's the trumpets are sounding. Everything's going to be coming sooner than later. So, but I've still had the beliefs that I do know that he's true. And like, I do know that he's actually here. Like
that totally makes sense. And one thing that I wanted to share with you guys, but I don't know if you've ever listened to the talk, His Grace is Sufficient by Brad Wilcox. Have you ever heard that or even?
That's like one of my dad's favorite talks.
Cool. Yeah. So really, really amazing talk. And he basically goes into this little analogy about playing the piano. And he's talking about how like when a person practicing the piano like makes a mistake, do we tell them they need to stop practicing? Like they're done? No, they just say like, try again. Right. And I think a lot of people either look at two sides where it's like, either you're a very, very, like very beginner at piano or you're a professional, right? And there's nothing in between. And that's the same with sinning. And that's the same with learning in our lives, right? It's like, we don't just we're babies, but then also we're perfect, right? We have all that in between that we need to practice and practice and practice, right? And so Brad Wilcox literally talks about how people forget grace. And like you said, so many people, I mean, I've had my own, I think all men have had their own problem with sexual things and struggling with it. And I think what's so hard about it is we're just like, I hate that. I hate doing that. Why am I doing that? And then we do it again and we're like, what? Like it almost like trips us out how we just keep doing it over and over and over again. And it's like, why do we, like, for example, my struggle was never with porn, but with actual girls. And my girlfriend I was having sex with for a long time and I wanted to stop. But I never did. And I would just sit there and I got to the point of where I just stopped repenting because I was like, this is impossible. I'm trying to do something that's impossible. And Brad Wilcox goes through, where he's talking about how all these groups of people forget, Jesus Christ's grace. And so I want to show you that real quick. He basically talks about how return missionaries and those who like forget that, cause like, for example, I served like a 3-year mission basically, right? Mm-hmm. And I went home and repented for 6 months, went back, and then I got home and freaking if I mess up, which I have since I've gotten home, and it's like, what the frick was I doing for 3 years? Like how that, like, I feel like a failure, right? But that's Satan trying to make you feel like, did you really think after your mission you wouldn't sin again? Like we're here, like you have to learn from your mistakes and you're not going to be perfect. Like we have to learn every single day. And so that's just Satan beating us up every single day of just being like, look how much you did and you're still sinning. Like God's not helping you. You know, you're not doing this. It's like, well, we're here to just have trial and error. That's why we have the sacrament every single Sunday to have our sins forgiven and taken away and washed away so that we can try again the next week, right? Because think about it. If you were to become perfect, like it doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take so much trial and error. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what he said. He said, I know return missionaries who come home and slip back into bad habits they thought were over. They beg promises made before God, angels, and witnesses, and they are convinced there is no hope for them now. They say, well, I've blown it. There is no use in even trying anymore. Seriously, these young people have spent entire missions teaching people about Jesus Christ and his atonement, and now they think there is no hope for them. These return missionaries don't understand grace, right? But I'll actually read that other one. That one was good too. He said, there are young men who grow up on their whole life singing, I hope they call me on a mission, and then they actually do grow a foot or two and flake out completely. They get their eagles, graduate from high school, and go away to college. Then suddenly these young men find out how easy it is not to be trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, or reverent. They mess up. They say, I'll never do it again, and then they do it. Then they say, I'll never do it again, then they do it. Then they say, this is stupid. I will never do it again, and then they do it. The guilt is almost unbearable. They don't dare talk to a bishop. Instead, they hide. They say, I can't do this Mormon thing. I've tried, and the expectations are just way too high, so they quit. These young men don't understand grace. And it's going to make me emotional, but those, like, I would listen to that talk every time I just felt like, I can't do this crap. Like, I've tried, and I can't overcome this weakness. And what I've realized is every single time we turn to Heavenly Father and we repent and go to church and just keep trying, he always provides us with blessings in the Spirit and always allows us to keep seeing blessings. And Satan's the one who says, you need to give up. You're too weak. You know, this expectation that the church is setting is too high. But the thing is it's not the church's expectation, it's God's, right? And God wants us to live like he does. He doesn't want us to live like the world, right? Which the world is saying, you do what you want to do. You go smoke, drink, party, you go have sex with girls, you go, look at porn, do whatever you want. And that's Satan's way of just putting you in a deeper and deeper hole of addiction and depression. And God's saying is that, hey, I look how far you came. I'm so glad you went 2 weeks without doing that bad thing. And now that you did it, like, let's move on from it so you can go another 2 weeks, or you can keep going farther and farther, right? God's the one like supporting us, loving us, and having we think he's like mad at us, or that he's like, wow, I just keep messing up and now like God's going to leave me. But Satan's the one convincing you of those things. What's really cool about all of us meeting today, which has been super awesome, is that like yesterday I was having a really bad day and I was just like super down and I was like, I need to go to the temple. So I woke up in the morning and after a couple of hours, I scheduled an appointment to go to the temple, right? And I was supposed to have 2 other guest speakers or people on my podcast that canceled last minute, like 2, right? And so I went to the temple, then they canceled, and I was like, frick. And so I was like, all right, whatever, like, because I have someone on tomorrow coming that I met at Vasa too, actually, funny enough. But, and so I was like, whatever, like, I guess I'll just have one tomorrow or on Sunday. And then when I thought it was so crazy because I met you guys, you said you were coming, and then I was thinking in the car on the way home, I was like, no way. Like, God provided such a cool opportunity. Like, it's just like,
It's so sick.
So cool.
yeah,
so
like
dope.
I was like, because they canceled last minute. Like, they were both supposed to be on, and they were just like, sorry, I'm actually busy this weekend. I was like, bro, what? Like, last minute? And
Oh
then
my gosh.
God provided you boys. So I was like, no way.
Let's go.
Yeah, bro, we are very glad to be here.
Well, I want both of you to end off by just sharing with the people listening and the people watching, like, what you know to be true. And you can be completely honest and say, I'm still trying to find, or you can say, like, I know this to be true and this is why. Like, just whatever your last thoughts are, whatever you feel you want people to know, and any advice or any things people also investigating the church and trying to figure out if God's real. So who wants to go first?
Yeah, I can go first.
All right.
I'm still obviously, on my journey right now, on getting back. So I don't have a lot to say that I can testify, from witness that is true, specifically within the church. I know that I do have a testimony of Jesus Christ, just because the times that I've mentioned previously, back in Moxie when I almost died, might be a little dramatic, obviously, but I definitely believe in the power of prayer, which obviously goes back to Jesus Christ. So I know he exists and he's in my life, even when I might not be reaching out to him, he's still there. But I guess some like advice that I would give is, if like your parents are telling you not to like go out and party, or like they're trying to guard you, trying to guide you, I guess, to not go do these things, don't take it as them trying to control your life, or them trying to make it so you don't fit in at school or whatever. Really, really, really think about it, and think about like the physical and long-term effects it might have on your health and your spiritual journey. Because I know for myself that those small things, like just taking a hit of a vape or taking that next sip, it's just further put me away from where I, actually want to be. So listen to your parents.
I like it, bro.
Yeah.
Sweet. What about you, Ethan?
So a couple things is that you might not know where your path is going, right? You might be still struggling there. Because I know for me, I'm still struggling on where I want to be in the next 5 years. But all that I can really say is, if you know that something you want to do spiritually is true and you really want to seek it out, you don't have to ask for permission. You can just go do it, man. Like it's like, I know for me personally, I haven't shared a lot, but there's been a ton of times where I've relied on God a lot. And there's been a couple times where I relied on myself. And even then, sometimes there's going to be moments where God's going to test you. And there's going to be moments where you're going to have to test yourself. So what I'm trying to get at here is you will always have two people to rely on. You'll have yourself and you'll have God and your parents. And I guess it's more than two people. But you will always have somebody there that you can rely on and that you can go seek out help and information, and you can ask questions and they'll give you answers. Even though you might be scared to, it's still good to go do it. And advice that I would give is to be healthy in all aspects of your mental health, physical, spiritual, especially, and emotional, most important. Because if you're not healthy in all those different things, then I don't know how to put this. Then like if you're struggling to be healthy on one thing, I sometimes what I would do is I'd just work on myself personally, especially because being in a relationship, I know this is true for me, and I was in a relationship for like 8 months. And after that happened, it really hurt a lot. And for the past 5 years, I have been working on myself. And now I feel like I'm starting to get into dating more and knowing a lot more girls to go on dates with. And I feel like God was helping that in a sense to help me with that healthy aspect of things. So if you're feeling like your health is struggling a bit, ask God, man. Just asking for help. Really, truly do what I suggested. Do a scripture a day. Go to church, to temple a lot. And that's about it.
Sweet. Thank you both so much. I think the last thing I would say, which the coolest part of the conversation I think we brought up was that just how powerful the atonement of Jesus Christ is. And anyone listening, I just want you all to know that no matter how far you go, no matter how deep you go, and this goes you two and me as well, that no matter how deep we go in sin, Jesus Christ can always get us out of it. And he can help us not only just get out of it, but overcome our weaknesses and change to where we don't have them anymore. And no matter how much we fall back in and we keep falling and we keep falling and we keep falling, it gets better. If we keep reading our scriptures every day, going to church, trying to serve others, trying to overcome our weaknesses by relying on God and what's taught by the prophets in the scriptures and by modern day prophets, if we just do all those things, I promise you all that you will overcome it. And it will get easier. And sometimes it'll get hard again, but every single time we know who we are. We know that we're children of a heavenly Father. We know why we're on earth. We know where we're going to be in the next life. And with that knowledge, when times gets hard, it can be a little easier and be a little more comforting than if we didn't know what we're doing here. You know, if we have no purpose in this life and then someone dies in our life, like it sucks, but at least we know we can see him again, right? And so I just want all you to know that you can always turn to Jesus Christ and completely change your life. And that's what I did, and that's what we're all doing, right? So thank you all for tuning in to Conversion to Christ podcast, baby. Let's go. I'm super grateful for this opportunity to meet these two dudes. I mean, this is the second time I've met them, but a super special conversation. I love these podcasts so much because I feel the Spirit so strong in these when it's just real and we're just talking about how we feel inside and how we know God's in our life. Thank you all so much. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.